Devo Mali Jomze Sangye Kanji Kebe Zoje Dabe Jala Zowa De Bande Sawe Lama Rimbo Taso Jiwara Benden Densho Kade Chimbe Gwane Jeso Wozon Toje Wadu Zedo Banden Sawe Lama Rimbo Taso Ningara Benden Densho Kade Chimbe Gwane Choda Temo Wadu Zedo Banden Sawe Lama Rimbo Taso Ningara Benden Densho Kade Chimbe Gwane Chanjo Ningbe Ba Dembar Anjo Masan Jeme Shera Paru Maje Manga Namge Ngobo Sozo Rani Yije Juyo Duzon Chanze Lo Deyan Tang Gade Para Gade Bodhi So Ha Deyan Tang Gade Para Samgade Deyan Tang Gade Para Samgade Bodhi So Ha Gere Dongda Jajo Jewa Mede Nebe Jenda Temba Roje Bezo So Taji Yo So Jebe Let me remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it bodhicitta motivation or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. With that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta motivation, we should participate in this discourse.
다들 힘좀 들이게 티라니 이 가사 타러 요새 되게 리베전스 메라 쉐버스 티해야 다들
So where we left off in this commentary last week is this outline called differentiating the objects of negation or refutation, gaksha in Tibetan, according to Sevatandika Madhyamika Umarangkyupa and according to Prasangika Madhyamika Umathengyulpa. Because we do find a difference in terms of what we call coarseness or gross level and subtle level difference there.
티라니가 놀라 가정군시 시멘자가 온게 티코나니를 춘좀 자면자 티랑지보다는 누구 싸움을 저시 명의 당에 잠지 마스바 누구랑 그외에 싸움을 미제당 미제당 제주라면 쉐바자면 티코나니 쉐바 송아면지 당연히 죄와 담지 송에 대다 죄배 내니 지시야 대다 이와대 당연히 예배 동다 마다 마제바 접지 동이나 유고 서문을 지어디 로양게 샤바도 마제바 유고랑 그 둘이지만 서문을 제미지 제바네 대과에 제바 송마 제바 송마 이베 텐제주스 제수지 슈미시바 예징 텐주와다는 주주 통보 주주가마 아 잠시경 다선자와 소에서 대코는 주주 쉬어봐 소와 이베 셰도 대대 세단 타이데 이번 조와다 세단에 대코는 일 제발 송아 딱동자와 저be 참 티라니 미라나야 미라나 니게로라 로랑게 데바타지 딱동자체 에 니주시 쇼나 다지가 참으로 되와 제바메데 니게로라 최다지 마다 마제베 제 뉴메디어 대코네의 제베 리베 다 이제네베 시즈지 쉐니 리보가라더서 숨어셰바 처음에비 셰르스 어디다 마지 티라니 제바 이렇게 가서 제바에 고리에 자라와디시나 다데마 도르디드시에는 어디다 티라니 제바 가리에서나 로지바시나 다동시와 담예와들이야 인도랑신스바 주고 말아 다동시에 추가를 다동시에 니지에서 거라 다 대교다나 다동시에 니지와 다가랑을 해서 동성으로 세다테서 롱지베 놀러내면 나 샤바 많이 봐 근데 여러분 저 주변에 각자시리스 뭐 유코라랑을 주바자를 가서 이거 거 요 타이 요리스 대교에서 또 배워서 뭐 유코라고 주바자요 말이지 다 돌도 어디서 보다
So we did talk about these two middle way schools standpoint with regard to what is to be negated or what is to be refuted, gaksha. But the text continues to explain the same thing here that from Sevatandika Madhyamikan point of view, Umar Rangkyuba in Tibetan, when we do analysis of imputed reality, it has to be findable, right? Something has to be findable under what we call ultimate analysis or that kind of imputed analysis. Yeah? Whereas Prasangika Madhyamikans, Uma Tengpa says that nothing should be findable under ultimate analysis. All phenomena are merely imputed or labeled, but nothing should be findable under that analysis. Yeah? So if something is findable under that analysis, that is the object of negation according to Prasangika Madhyamika schools of thought. But for Sevatandika Madhyamikans, their object of negation is, hypothetically speaking, of course, that if something exists objectively under its unique modes of existence without established by way of appearing to a correct perception, okay? So then that thing is the object of negation. There is no such a thing that exists, right? Because according to Sevatandika Madhyamikans, something exists, objectively. We talked about that last time, right? And something is imputed onto that. So through this combination, things exist, right? There is no such thing as completely existing from its own side, right? Without depending upon an imputing thought, right? So they said that for them, the object of negation is that something existing under its own right without appearing, without being posited by of appearing to a correct perception, right? Correct perception, we talked about that before. Whereas for Prasangika Madhyamikans, all phenomena are merely imputed by terms and concepts, and nothing really exists objectively from its own side. Nothing should, right? So therefore, when we put phenomena under ultimate analysis or the imputed analysis, then nothing should be findable. If we were to find something, then that indicates that things exist intrinsically or truly, right? So we talked about, these two medieval schools of thought, Sevatandika Madhyamika school and Prasangika Madhyamika school, with regard to how they establish or posit ultimate reality or ultimate truth, right? And what is regarded as the object of negation or refutation, gaksha in Tibetan. Remember that Prasangika, Madhyamikans, among many examples, their best or preferred example is the coiled rope that appearing as a snake, right? So that's what they use to be able to present their viewpoint, ontological viewpoint. And Sevatandika Madhyamikas use the magical illusions or the creations as their preferred or the best examples to explain their, a standpoint on the ontological status of phenomena.
ronji ba da chira ma do de ba zuli ya cha yo wa se tenju wa da peje da riwa be cha mo je ne ma de shop de ke hira me so cha se ti da ti cha de wa de ronji ba da tenju wa che wa lo xie go ju ze lo ti re ke.
So in this commentary, as you may recall, that the author very briefly presented, what is regarded as, how things are accepted to be existent according to different Buddhist schools of thought, the 4 schools of tenets, right? So what do Vipassikars say? What do the Southern Tikars say? And what do the Chidamartins say, right? And then what do the Madhyamikans say? But then sort of more extensive presentation is focused on the distinction between Savatandika Madhyamikans and the Prasangika Madhyamikans with regard to, right, how things actually exist or what is to be negated. That's because these 2 schools, there's almost like a fine distinction, isn't it? Savatandika Madhyamikans come very close to, right, how things are presented by Prasangika Madhyamikas, but didn't quite get it, right? So it's so fine distinction, so that's why we looked at the different preferred examples they used to be able to present their standpoint. So as compared to lower Buddhist schools of thought, Savatandika Madhyamikans' presentation is a very subtle presentation, right? It is where it's very coming close to Prasangika, not quite yet. So that's why the authors feel the need to dwell on this and explain it a little more extensively. So we already talked about this before, but now it's more like a summary conclusion between these 2 schools of thought. As we said before, for Savatandika Madhyamikans, something has to be findable under ultimate analysis, right? And whereas for Prasangika Madhyamikans, nothing should be findable under ultimate analysis. So that's that little fine distinction between the 2.
What did that coin Kevara Dimaka? What did that? Ronjibe, you go to Yeva, Joel Ransin, Kaza, Demacho Shago Marva. Louis Shavo Maima, you run River said. That 10 years ago, you couldn't go to Yeva, Corona, Ramon to Shago, Ransin to Shagora. What did that? Kevara Dimaka duty. The Chazon, that Ronjiva, double doesn't say killing with the said, what did Toba doesn't quite the matter of careers, and Toba doesn't say you could be able to show you.
No, sir.
So teacher, that Ranjiva Toba doesn't quite the Ravi in some. In Toba doesn't you could be able to you could be charging to set up Toba doesn't teach her marriage.
No,
she don't Toba doesn't mind Chavara.
no, sir. No,
That said that the syndrome is there, Toba doesn't care. Ramon, the much of a killing. When is the non-gate of short? They were to know what doesn't mind the radio.
no,
The what doesn't do much of much of
no, sir.
which is the thank you what the Kaza to them Hinalia Ronji, but that thing you were chilled of your leg, chill or a tower.
No, sir.
She does the chilled of less to you, she had the Tobas.
No, sir. So as Krishna said, within Buddhist schools of thought, except for Savatandika Madhyamikans or other Buddhist schools of thought, they are not even in the neighborhood of Prasangika Madhyamikans, right? So they're quite far away. Whereas Savatandika Madhyamikans is really in the proximity. So there's really fine distinction. So that's why more explanation is provided on that. Prasangika Madhyamikans, as we know, say that all phenomena are merely labeled. Taksam, talk about taksam, right? The technical term is merely, tsam in Tibetan. Takwa means to impute, to label. So all phenomena are merely imputed. That's how they exist. Nothing is findable under ultimate analysis. Okay. Now the Savatandika Madhyamikans do not accept that phenomena are merely labeled. They understand the meaning. They said they cannot be. That's what I said. They're disagreeing with it, right? It's not like they didn't understand it. For them, they're like, now how can phenomena be just merely labeled, right? Something exists, right, from the side of the phenomena. So they find it unacceptable, what the Prasangika is saying. That's why they is a little closer to that. And so for them, they said it's a combination of what we might call, intrinsic existence and subjective labeling, isn't it? Like something exists intrinsically, but something is labeled onto things, and they don't see contradictions between these two things, isn't it? And that's how things exist, right? Phenomena appear to correct perceptions, right? So they are labeled based upon that perception. Things appear from that side intrinsically, they're labeled onto that, so that's the combination there. Whereas Prasangika say, no, that's not right, feasible at all. So that's why for Prasangika Madhyamikans, every existence, every phenomenon that exists is a merely labeled phenomenon. Whereas for Seventh-day Madhyamikans, phenomena cannot be just merely labeled, right, as existent, right? Something has to exist intrinsically as well, right? And they don't see a contradiction there. Whereas for Prasangikas, if something exists intrinsically, then we cannot say they are merely labeled, isn't it? So that's the kind of a difference we find between these two Madhyamika schools of thought. And so, they both might use the word taktva and self, trying to look for imputed phenomenon, that kind of analysis, but the way they do analysis is not necessarily looking at the same way. Okay, there is a difference there.
What is that Sumba said, Children Doba Dang Menk Daxamji, Ding, Nangsha Damji, Judu Young. Didn't didn't saw here them. Taking the Janga Dang Jonso, Tanya Davi, Ming Na Danny, Long Dollar Shugways, Tone Dribjing. Mings are the dinner you may so Shaji Daji, Ruan Yinje, Mingti Mazumbar, Sukiba de Kadola Sham, Yeba Sham, Shashi Sha, Hezo, Dr. Zena, Naya, Minijin, Namsha Tangi Medaba Jurus. Tina Shu Tangi Ming Daxam ne Meva, Tani Meva la, Tabra Judu Dawatang, Toyo le Merdawatang Jayang. Pedon de Tanya di Yemini Mizunte, Tabak Tarke Langwala, Tanya be Teme, no Miniji Che, Tina, the Yume Cheva, Udramoni, Jemini Bishir, Tanya Velo Hingi, never Yemi, Libashi Goni, Zogzu Chamu, Yegoba, Songla. Didn't think you at Tavani Kokawa, Tartubati Yima, Yang Song So. Tether Ming Gantau Samji Shady Dingness Junji Janga Jonso Sajita Shashawa Dene Lundi Chizulanameva Te Lutu Yasi Niji. Gomba Tartuba, Java Semar Chibi, Shingda Sembo Lobo Sanji Jangdang, Pandan Dawa Chakwa, Yesi Shevela Sanji. Tima Miwe, Nuri Tumada, Tene, Gombaji the Yajeki, Gone, Sheban Zedo, Otirda, the Tenjo, the look short, the Zaga, the Karsana, and that's in the Gombolu, Ayan de She. And the Sanji and Dawa was a Tenjo Lobo University to Ganga, James to the Del Pavioris. She that is also a deal charge with Tilshan, he was. Or she that did not hear the Ganga. She don't die. Tenjo Mambo Euro, the Sina Trasha, the Roda, and Papa Yapsi, take a Sanji Dawa. She did it. That Jesus showed that she was showed to the shower, he did it.
So as Geshe read from the text and explained that so the Prasangika Madhyamikan or Umatengyopar's standpoint is regarded as the most authoritative presentation, or that's the final say in the matters here. So how could one say that? Of course, there have been many Prasangika Madhyamikans, but in the works of the most prominent, leading scholars of Prasangika Madhyamikans, such as Arya Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, because these are called the spiritual father and son, right? Always regarded by all the Madhyamikans, as well as Buddhapalita, Sangyechang, as well as Chandrakirti, Dawatakba, as well as Bodhisattva Mahasattva Shantideva. All of them, right, subscribe to and illustrated the Prasangika Madhyamikans, a standpoint on the ultimate reality, and established and accepted that as the final truth of the matter, or the say in the matter.
What did that Tenjo that Zhu Lu to Rangju Lu, the Dodajo, the Nijo Omanisha, Dodajo, Zhu, the Lingdeja, Ishinibu to Shawara. The Zujo Oma Ranju said the Hiaso, and the Wokama Lahila, or that the Shikama Lahila, the Shawara.
Dodichebal Lingdeja, the Susumbe.
Lingdeja in the days of Harsa.
So those are oft quoted and referred to top-notch Prasangika Madhyamikan masters, Arya Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Buddhapalita, Chandrakirti, and Shantideva, right? And so now the top kind of notch Sevatantra Madhyamika masters are, because Sevatantra Madhyamika again has two sub-schools. The one that follows the Sutrayana way of thinking, we call Sevatantrika, Sautantrika, Sevatantrika Madhyamikan school, a mouthful to say, Dodicheba in Tibetan, Umarangyuba, and then Yogacharya Sevatantrika Madhyamikan, Ninjacheba Umarangyuba. So in the case of the Sautantrika, Sevatantrika Madhyamikans, Dodicheba, the top masters are Baba Viveka, Lobel Lengdenche, and Lobel Yishen Yingbo, Jnana Garba, right? In the Yogacharya Sevatantrika Madhyamikans, the top masters are Shanta Rakshita, Shivaso, and Kamal Shil, Pemeng Angsul in Tibetan, right? Yeah.
What this is Jeremy did that Ranju got the low Masha to Gaza, the Tony got it, and the low the Kamalashla, Omano Shia, Song Dua, because it was the Chiquata, low Shaso looks at that, and the Kamalashla, and Lalo, Queen Chiquata, Ranju, the Shawasa, the Kamalashla Ocean, Nam Shunga here or the here.
So Jeremy in his works, when he was dealing with or presenting the Sevatantrika Madhyamikan's viewpoint, as we said before, he referred among many works to the illumination of the middle way, Umanangwa, by Kamal Shila, because Kamal Shila is the direct disciple of Shanta Rakshita, right? So the master and his disciple together belong to the same thing, and Jayadamurti regarded that work as the most authentic work on presenting Saivatantika Madhyamika school.
어디래 다 가서 어디래 다 총벌매가 해봐 처음에 실수 강사 지시 다 수많은 셔담서 떠봐도 민그 당선이 때문에 남샤 탐진 조주량 되는 속도 되는 소하고 해등 되게는 쟁가 당 종소지 탄예닥선 답에 명장라 때네 랑도라 휴배 동접진 명장라 때네 유미 이미소 사제 탐지 루아 인지 명디 말씀벌 속입에 내 카도라 참 이해를 참 사이를 샤해서 따로 되는 나야 미증 넘버 남샤 탐지에서 매자번 조로스 어때 조로 되나 셔당이 명그 딱좀 내 매바 사 타게 주디 딱바당 토요일 매르딱바당 자양 자네양 베드로들의 당예의 유미 미중데 딱바달 딱바달 켈랑발라 타니베 테마 힌지 네미니 케베여 셔세 어디다 타바 주르다바다 주골 주르다바니 가르쳐요세나 타바 주르다바들 야 타바 주면서 테마 힌누르바 타바 주르로들 다 주르로들 테마 힌누야 그 주고니래요 어시다 타니베 테마 힌누면서 타니 예와 가르쳐 숨된 시하러 대거나 이까지 또 세배를 잡아다 타니베 테마 힌누면 대거는 지키도 제외 리변대만 멤버원스 타니디와 제주 섬도 잘 어디 지역을 그래서 데르마도 지를 속세는 가르스 카도를 예외에서 주기를 가르스 가가 들지마시는 제가 저 남자 샤도 말아 제가 다가 디소리서 다라 차야 디카버스 마버스 다라 차샤미 티네 게네 제바 파 먹고 다라 비게 샤지테드야 되는 거래 민자지 샤바스 어디서 그랬어
So according to Prasangika Madhyamikans Roma Thingyubar, phenomena are merely labeled by terms and concepts, yet they are functional, right? The functionality is feasibility, right? It's feasible for them to function, right? And so how is that possible, isn't it? Prasangika Madhyamikan says that nothing is findable under the imputed analysis, but things are merely labeled, but yet they exist and function as they do, right? And how can we explain that? And so this is where, as Geshe explains, of course, Prasangikas use many examples. The one we looked at is a coiled rope appearing as snake, and we label that as a snake, right? But there is no snake in any part or all of the part of that coiled rope. It's just merely labeled and you thought. But of course, that is a distorted perception. With me, that's not a real snake, right? When you go there, it's a coiled rope. It's not a snake, Now, in terms of labeling, even calling a real snake a snake is exactly the same thing. There is no difference. But then why say, a coiled rope is not a real snake, and the real snake is accepted as snake. So what makes that difference, right? A real snake functions as a snake, So this is a very subtle matter that we're dealing with, but that's where we are looking from the conventional valid perception point of view, mostly, isn't it? And so the reason why a real snake is also merely labeled but functions as a real snake is because it fulfills these three criteria, three standards. Okay, so the number one, right? It is known as snake for conventional valid cognition, right? A snake is known as a snake for a conventional valid cognition. Number one, okay, and so that conventionally is not invalidated or undermined by any other conventional valid cognition or perception, right? It cannot be challenged, right? There's no other conventional valid perception. No, it's not a snake, right? There is no invalidation or no challenge per se undermining it, right? Number two. The number three is that even from the ultimate analysis point of view, right, there is no contradiction or inconsistency here. That makes sense? So the 3 points are there. So because of that, right, in terms of labeling as a mere label, a coiled rope labeled as snake and a real snake labeled as snake is exactly the same, no slight difference. But why one is a fake snake and one's a real snake, but that has to look at in terms of these three criteria, isn't it? Because a coiled rope, right, it is not conventionally known as a snake, right, valid. But if you go there, another conventional valid cognition will contradict it. It's a rope, it's not a snake. That makes sense? Whereas in the case of real snake, there is no such challenge or invalidation or underestimation. So this is why Prasangika Madhyamika says that although things are merely labeled, but conventionally they are feasible to exist and function as they do. Yeah. So that's a really subtle matter there.
Long tenure. Long tenure is Chong Mini Lagashi Shadows Demora Chimbicab Rimoshi Onshu the Chamshu Gaze Sakuka is ever lay Bamboo Dinji Chever Gigi Eva Perguene Chutab Udine, Mojabi, Shirtadon Zene, Mini Jang, Jigdebe Mingzana, Shajitaji, Roa, Sumbishir, Sherda, but then the way Shabji, Timagin Doylum, Shida in that sort of Dene, Shinga Jivatar, Tiki Pumana Dene, Secondo Sensation, she, Longa Dene, Shinga Bay. Dene Kansa so Shenam Jena Mini Jang Majiba Rangi Dakizana Den Tawatami Shawa Shashitani Roma Temata Gizi Shawale Jang Yapsi Je Doi Gongdong Tar Jiburangi Dakikel Kamchola Den Jibuki Minkadawa Stanley Meva Jumatan Danayang Jume Jibuta Jibungunil Panila Tanya do Sumi Meji Chevardang Sena Diwai me saw yes Chevar Yeva Heavy Shede Shundir se Junde Yela Sawdang Kede Simse Jundana Sawdang You make people say so that she saw Lemon Len tomorrow, she tamji minky, she tamji mink doesn't lay, meva, you mother down, Simu Susu Cheva tamji, and Mandeva Sharon what they be sure. There Lagula Dinzuki Cheva you, but you make Jibu the Jibu whenever. Ye so ye la Simu Miso Cheva Yeva, Ralu la Shashaba Cheva tang. Maro Omelo, Gunzo la Yolo Bever. Songpa Nyi Mingewe Neja Higo Sos. Dir Mingja Tayo Jive Tongyang Mingja Hive Yuda Tada Kigla Tayo Jive Si Meda Cheda Kig Sos. Mingdawa Tayo Na Yumi Gujang Mingja Tayo Ina Yugodi Yubada Ti Dir Tonji Divicheros. That's what the Minjata Kachu Minjata was a Ramoja Jemmy, Minjata was the Minjata was the Minjang, the Jangba di Karjo is in Ramona Yavajo, Shokara Yavajo Barwa, and the Puba Minjang Itaus and Isiro, the Puba Minja Mahaba Ju or Mother. Sita Minja means a mother for a tabedrina here. Guvernor Yomar said, Kisamarva was that the Minja said the Rango Yavachu mother, Tanya Yavachu Marisi.
So as we said, that in Prasangika school of thought, phenomena are, mere labels, Mingda, merely labeled, right? If you complete the sentence, merely labeled by terms and concepts, isn't it? And so the instrumental word is the sum in Tibetan, Ming sum, merely label or mere labels, right? So it means that it doesn't mean that they don't exist in reality. What it means is that they don't exist intrinsically from its own side. Yeah. So when we look at the word merely labeled by terms, Mingda, right, that shows that they are conventionally existent, right? They're labeled. Okay? By terms and concept, the concept of the imputation part, that means they don't exist intrinsically. Isn't it? So we avoid the two extremes of eternalism and nihilism, isn't it? But term means they exist conventionally, but imputed by concept means they don't exist intrinsically. So by avoiding the two extremes, so they're presenting the middle path there.
What they you may give the give whenever you last. The Cheva Kares now the any play, say the diva you made the deal, don't worry about that, but no, the Chibaris. Make it doesn't see what I'm maybe Chibaris. That Karen and Chibaris and quality Chashi, you may give say the diva you the Casa diva Yomar, say Yomarva. She don't miss the diva, what it is. Chashi Jam Shari Mother. So that look, do that, the Chibaji can race, but Cheva Yomar is over that.
So as stated in the text, we shall explain that from Prasangika Madhyamika point of view, right, an illusory person, right, a magically created human being who looks human, right, and a real human being, both are same in that they are merely labeled. Okay, there is not slightest difference in terms of mere labeling. But of course, a magically created human is not a real human being, isn't it? Whereas a real human being, all right, is human, but they both look human, same. They both are merely labeled, but one is fake human, if we can say that, or they didn't say the word fake. One is real. And the difference is that the real human has a mind. The illusory created human has no mind. Okay? So if we somehow happen to think we kill the illusory human, there is no negativity. There's no bad karma, right? Whereas if we kill a real human with a mind, then that's a negativity of killing. Understand? So as we look at these two examples, right, in terms of being merely labeled, they're exactly the same. There's not different. Both of them don't exist independently from their own side. Both appear as human, same, but one is, right, not real. So if you kill that illusory human being, there is no negativity involved. But if you kill the real human, the real meaning has a human mind, then there is a negativity of killing. Okay? So the real human functions as a human, isn't it? So that all goes back to, in my footnote, the three criteria we talked about earlier. That's in my footnote, by the way.
Oh, this is Karsa. This Mingya Tayo Chebe Tonya. Mingya Chebe say you down, Dr. Kigla. Tayo Chebe, Meta, Cheta Kigso. Make a doctor in the Yoga Junks, Tayo Juice Shawseta. Mingya Tayo is the yoga, Mingya Tayo is the yoga, but the Rumora that Mashampu Tayo is Sigmara.
No,
Cheta make a doctor ready. She go Mingya Tayo Maris. Mingya Tayo in the yoga race, what I tell yoga race. Mingya the yoga, you bought the team that told you to do it. You bought the Mingya Tayo, Mingya Tayo, you may chop so this.
Kandeskin.
You buy in the Mingya Tayo, Mingya Tayo in the Yeva chops.
I know.
Tayo do the Mingya Tayo Maris.
No, so.
Tayo Rigo.
I don't know so. Tayo in the yoga rest again.
Oh, Tayo in the yoga, Takaji.
No, so. And a ribbon radi and Karsa get Takzami Tayo means the word.
La.
Ribbon radi, Mingya Tare, Tamar so.
Karsa. Did Tayo Mas Mingya said, Mings of Red shall love the Mingya Tayo Maris. Rumora Yorba.
I don't know.
Rumora Lavia Yorba.
No,
The Mingya said the days.
I don't know so.
That Mingya Tayo said, Lao no, he calls Todali. Mingya Tayo.
No, so. Oh, so the what Geshe explained is where we talk about something imputedly existent, right? Something just simply imputed existent. That's the difference, right? For example, all the things that exist are merely they are imputedly existent, whereas for example a horn on a rabbit's head is imputed, but it's not considered as imputedly existent. Right, because it's a non-existent. Right? You can label it. There's horn on the rabbit's head, but there isn't one. Right?
Yeah. What did you Karsa? There is a Dujana Damel Travel Shiva to the Sumbi, Sumra, you go back Shiva Ni. That Changdong is the Changdong is said. Shundu Ngudi Medaso Tambi, do Changdong the Shiva. Shugde Colosum Ye, do Changye Jok du Shiva, Tangbodi, tell a chill Tigme, de Nudu, Rabbe Medaso. Shuduke, Taves, Dajum Jipadu, Padu Driva Shiva Mahansing. Tenzin Dorjee, Rabbe Meda Chuduk Dang, Rangshi Dorjee, Lamji Dudu, Nikatema Yola, Tedako Gomba de Lomu, Shenda Jang, Teda de Sheva Joro, Wonja Lung Dene, Shijapar, Shigome Niba Meva Tang, She Sombatar, Chulam. Ngô sơ ràng xí mê đô dê làm thị chức bù yī dê thế là xế mê xí cô nhị bà mê là thì xí rà bê mê đà sô chú rục đô bê làm gì nè thức xâm kháng kì phạc lâm yàng thọ mê nụ bà xế dê dê bà ô đi xế đô xí ô thế là xí dàng Dote was Rama some Judahina. The Ranju music Ganga and the concert Ranju don't talk about the Tavato Shagora.
No.
That the Dote Vada Chirama to the Sanji Goma that Takajiva Shagori. Concert Ranjata don't talk about this was over to show you them killing Marva.
No.
She said, Dami Rabat Tovali, then in the Sanji Goma killing it. Thank you, I said, and the Dami Rabaton and the Sanji Gomotasho. Nirang Tavatam Yard, Toto Maris.
No.
Tavatova is don't check them stock with this, or teach our years with that.
No, so as Geshe explained, that in lower Buddhist schools of thought, particularly Vaibhashikas, Charamava, and Southern Tigas Dodeva, so they all subscribe to this notion that in order to achieve, even Buddhahood, one needs to realize the selflessness of a self-sufficient and substantially existent self. Right? And that's enough. Yeah. Whereas Prasangika Madhyamika say, like, forget about enlightenment. With that realization, you even can't achieve nirvana, right? So Prasangika said you have to realize the selflessness of phenomena. Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas do not talk about selflessness of phenomena. They said if you want to become a Buddha, you just need to realize the selflessness of a self-sufficient and substantially existent person. It's a mouthful to say. Rangjathuba, self-sufficient. Jayu, substantially existent, right? Tongba means empty of that kind of self. Okay? So that is a gross level selflessness. That is a very coarse understanding of selflessness. Whereas Prasangika Madhyamika say that you have to realize the subtle, if you will, the selflessness, which is the selflessness of a person and phenomena, right? To become both Arhat or attain Nirvana and to become a Buddha, enlightened beings.
다디 공도디 히자바 공도도 다지못하다 이 담이 참고도 우리 세야디다 텐주 제주시 어디 히자 지고 이번 매버서야디 시외고스는 시와냥데 서야 고디로 어딜다 담이 참고도 어디 말이지 다 쉬어도 강사 담이 해야돼 단다 롱지 민주디나 가제건 샤고르와 텐주 고디는 강사담에 쇼이담이 시초제 거리샤마도 강자체가 말아 강사담이라마샤 쇼이담이 참고 제 말아 시 강사데 담에 강사담에 십가와 보발로 쇼이데담이 쇼이담이 어떻게 하면 가제건 체가 말아
Symptom about the kasadi 단다 게 랑규바니 디 최그 다음에 가사 다음에 기 타라케 바샤고 랑규메 마저스 가서 제도니가 샤고르 버게 제도니가 최 당매 켈링거 말로디 샤이데
제도니가 최이데 거 켈링 말아 알로노 심자바다 랑규메 최이데 켈링거
no just double checking, no harm there. Prasangika Madhyamika say that one must realize subtle selflessness in order to achieve both nirvana and enlightenment. Yeah, and they refer to this one particular line in Aryadeva's 400 stanzas on the middle way, Chatuksheta, Uma Shibhyapa, which says, Shigun Yiva Mabade, there is no second entrance to the peace. Right, the peace refers to the solitary peace of nirvana. There's no second entrance, means there's only one door entrance, right? And that one door is realizing the subtle selflessness. So as Geshe explained, Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas, they only talk about selflessness of a person. They don't talk about selflessness of phenomena. Even that selflessness is a very gross level, right? Selflessness of a self-sufficient and substantially existent self. Okay? And that's good enough to achieve nirvana and enlightenment. Whereas in the Chittamatrins, mind-only school of thought, and Savatantika Madhyamikans, they do talk about selflessness of a person and selflessness of phenomena, right? But then these two selflessness are differentiated in terms of coarseness and subtlety, right? The object of negation is different. It's not exactly the same thing for Chittamatrins and Savatantika Madhyamikans. According to Prasangikas, the two selflessnesses are qualitatively exactly the same thing, right? There is no difference between selflessness of a person and selflessness of phenomena. Selflessness is selflessness. Then why we say, what's the difference? Well, one is established on the person and one is established on the phenomena. The bases are the different, but the selflessnesses are exactly the same thing. Whereas mind-only school and seventh Madhyam, we can say the selflessnesses are different, right? One is coarse, one is subtle, because the object of negations are different. Yeah.
What did Karsa? Said the Sanjay should be soon ridiculous and damage so I do just so yeah. Kagachiba mines so lot some understand then take damage you kada use me said and Damila Chara share what the yoga Karisina. Kadu do just so do the yon and the Yaga to the trouble doya Tondalia, tap the doya Tondali, or then damage soon at the war, Tibetan mother said, yes, Sanjay Kononi to the Karsa. No news you know, he do a Ganga Sunza Mara.
No,
So the code use a coron Devantania, Tritigo Moyarama. She said that the show not so song where you didn't do the Keva down to the Lil Daniel Song Yaza. In Damita Da, you are Meva Sado, Tadu Tiba Song Sa, Tiba Jiro Sado, the Momo Yoga Ganga, Ganga Be, Shunga Digna. In Sanjay, the top gig in Ziva, but they can't call to water.
No. So we often said that Shakyamuni Buddha taught as many as 84,000 discourses or aggregates of teachings, right? And why this many, right? It's because to suit the mental dispositions and different karmic dispositions and capacities of different individuals, So that's why Buddha ended up giving all different levels of discourses, right? He couldn't have taught only one thing and stopped there. Sometimes Buddha said as if there is a self of a person, right? Under certain circumstances and for certain dispositions. And then for others, he said, well, there is no self. Looks like he's contradicting himself. He said there is a self for some, then there is no self, right? And then within this, he differentiates different kinds of selflessnesses, isn't it? And sometimes he talks about selflessness of a self-sufficient, substantial, existent self. Then for others, he talks about different levels of selflessnesses. And even in terms of yanas, vehicles, right? Some people say, well, ultimately there are 3 yanas of vehicles. But some say, no, ultimately there's one vehicle, yana. So all this, how should I say, different positions and different thoughts and all of these things, what Buddha talked about is because Buddha couldn't have taught just the way he wanted to say it and just say one thing and stop there. Because he need to take into account the mental dispositions, the karmic dispositions, and the capacities of different beings. Of course, his ultimate wish is to lead everybody, right, to final one vehicle and to realize the selflessness as presented by Prasangikas, but he couldn't do it right from the beginning, right? So we look at this thing, this is what we call Buddha is a very skillful teacher, right? He slowly prepares you, to lead you to where he wants you to lead to, right? Yeah.
What did you call that? Give to the demo was it? Give the Medawa and Joki, Tabichu, the double jury, conduct, then Jejuma. Get the Jibanam Bamba, Shiva Dani, Danger, Siva Jazuki, here songs. Dear Donny, darkness also. Darkness and the dark was it died. You want to soon do you see the Yin Jung Lucilla, Yi Gun the shower, Siva the Thunder Jung, Tea Nimber Medava Dumia Temba Day. Do you go here to tell a dene, Medava Shiva Jola? Teach in the tell a dene, Siva the Joa Jenny, tea, don't do them. Tava told the Juba Hishing. Tell a dene. Chulungu Gitabe, Chu Dinju Gishu, Ranshi the Java, Musu the Tone, Tangi, Jevi, Sizugo, Jewi sauce, Chu Tabarian, without doing it on Bashi. Shawasumu Sim Jonshi, short Sim Jonshebi, Chune Rashimeva, he sauce. 我这但他把主要成龙我那上的那当没到个làm的是，他没大的这农业啊这的啊没大收入的啊说的这个，那个的成龙也这样长大了，的他里啊内容些长大了，那边小没到我这人说农业些着的，咱们这块的是忙我的北宋国就这种的，这来考里就给考里就嘛现在。他把同的这个嘛是吧？我这talk到了那个送过来的，现在可以等于嘛我送过来，我一天都天超过了的。可以一天我说呢，可能基本上是说这边是3个月呢，你考谈的这个嘛是吧？他可以中的嘛，我现在他中的可是面对人家那天谈的什么这个了，这个上，那确实没到这些。他的现在刚刚开始啊，特别开始，他特别现在都送下去是吧？可是反正学送就刚刚，从那这些当面他们现在这边你们什么人，你现在帮他，这个你们这样从那送人，我的现在的呀，你们什么也菜弄呀，从那，人家去银行这妈妈送人，是我的送过来的人。
So as Krishna read from the commentary and explained that of course the actual path that liberates us from samsara and take us to a state beyond suffering or nirvana or enlightenment is the wisdom realizing selflessness or emptiness. Okay? But in order to guide us to that actual path, the liberating path, Buddha in the beginning talked about many other discourses, right, preparing us for that. For example, Buddha talked about impermanence, right? Impermanence is understand not a liberating path, it's more like a ripening path, right? Ripens our mind, prepares our mind. Then he talked about the suffering nature of samsara, right? If we don't reflect on the suffering nature of samsara, and then in the first place, we are not genuinely going to aspire for or seek nirvana from samsara, right? If you think samsara is not too bad, it is a happy place, then, I mean, why would anybody seek, freedom from samsara? So when he talks about what's wrong with samsara or the suffering nature, because when we started to see the problem of samsara, obviously nobody wants problems, so we want to say, okay, I want to get out of this problematic situation, and this is where we started to seek the liberation nirvana, right? So as our mind is prepared through teaching impermanence, suffering nature of samsara, the suffering of the 3 bad migrations, all of those things, our mind is ripened, prepared, right? And then gives you the actual path that liberates us from the suffering of samsara. So that's Buddha's, pedagogical way of guiding us on the path. Right? Because he knew that the wisdom is the most powerful path, as stated, in other texts. And my footnote, we have seen this in the guide itself. All these branches are taught by Buddha for the sake of wisdom. Remember. In other words, just reminded in my footnote, all the first 5 perfections have been taught by Buddha for the sake of the perfection of wisdom, remember? So all other teachings Buddha taught is to prepare, to ripen our mind, get us ready for the actual path that is the liberating path, Yeah.
Tene dawe shaji se riba chuji be jewali shinje lo ne dawala so ye zamba ti kunzo de danye teringo wa de na ba mini she ni shero tinje mala ba ne dungela so ye zamba te ngoba de kunzo de danye teriyo wa ni shero she so ba ta pumbo ta ba so zindan ji yi tanye to ya mela Meza so zembe yune, tanye de yebe. Tinyela, tanye de shinje lo malo keba yeba zamna goni, tige songje, 티 커너이도 소소 다음에다 강대야 뭐좀 좀 내가 때니 티 나나 신실로 뭐도 제발 제 예민이 소스 그래서 나는 데도 메다 주루도 어디 가서 아니 송 메다 주루도 내우타도 타와 톱톱면은 상지 메다 주루라 봐선 거야 가래잖아 그 대송할 때는 애네 그게 코알 이슈가 다다 지금 메다 주루도 거벌이었지 다 가서 메다 주루 도저 주루도 거벌이야 다다 와다 아니 그 등에 코아 대화도 가가 타이드 메인서 어디 라바샤니야 아니 스테니 디 라바든 통도 주선도 때는 차에 당어야 쇼베 돈 송부리스 뭐지 그런 뭐네 자나 라바 메타 주루데야 타바타야 라미 메체니 티베탄야 마리스 어디야디 가스노로 돈 송부리스 어디서 왔어
So if the actual path that liberates us from samsara and take us to nirvana or enlightenment is the wisdom gone beyond, then why did Buddha teach the Four Noble Truths and their 16 attributes, including impermanence, right? What about those 16 attributes and the Four Noble Truths? Don't they constitute the path, right, to liberate us from samsara? Of course, now we should keep in track from footnote, right? From Prasangika point of view, we are looking at this, right? They said, well, all those 16 attributes are a way of preparing our mind, right, for the wisdom gone beyond. Because all of those 16 attributes, relatively speaking, are course level realities, isn't it? And which we can maybe relatively easy to understand first, and then slowly Buddha guides into the subtle selflessness, so by simply understanding or realizing the 16 attributes, we are not going to be liberated from samsara, according to, right? And, but those will help us to get rid of some what we call distorted cognitions, right? When we talk about there is selflessness in the 16 attributes, then that means what's the opposite of that? There's a self as a permanence. That is not a reality, right? There's no such thing as a self. So by understanding that course level selflessness, we're able to counteract that kind of cognitive distortion, if you will. So those, in other words, are way to ripen, prepare our mind for understanding subtle selflessness.
Oh, this because tell go near you told so less because do so need the go you could have done it you are doing so need Zemba there. Go to could have done it you are need share or share so but Pumo tapaso zidan you tanya de amela. Timidapsos the you tanya the yevese. Tinha the tanya the shinjilo mother Shiva Yavata Goni, Tige Songye. Tikona ye de Suso Metaso County Young, Madrop Jim. Tell a ten shinjilo malogi. Shiva Yemini sauce. Or the Rabbi Metas Sunga de Chidon Yene Karsa. Duge Devada and the data Medaba Tabazi, Corolo Tondi Midu Cheva Yoda, Tishan Cheva Song Mother, the Rabbi Medajurusuna, the core, and the show Nidu Dame Tabata Tamusi, the Song Mari. Tarvalia Tia Tadala, Nuru Tada Song Mari, and the Dame Rabato, the Tabata, Unitaza, who needs Song Yamari. Tell Cheva Yamaris. Or tell it, but in the Casa de Chidon in the Dunga Dame to Mitaso Juru Rabasha de la Rabat Dojo, Rabat Juru Dojo da Tunjo Dunga Metas of the Lord de Lea, Lord Tony Michaza, or Tibetan Cheva Song Race. The Madaraya de Don't 강사 내가 타도 정신 디렉션 송도 말이지. 어디서 그랬어요?
So Buddha's discourse on the Four Noble Truths and their 16 attributes, such impermanence, do present, the correct realities, but not at the subtle level, but they do serve purpose. They do prepare our mind and ripen our mind for understanding subtle reality or selflessness. When we look at, for example, we have a lot of distortions or cognitive distortions within ourselves, such as we regard that which is impermanent as permanent, isn't it? So in order to get rid of that kind of a distorted cognition, then Buddha talks about coarse level of impermanence, isn't it? And we regard that which is in the nature of suffering as happiness, right? In order to get rid of that kind of a distortion, then Buddha talks about the suffering nature of samsara, right? And we grasp at that which is selfless as being self, right? Then to get rid of that, so Buddha presents the 16 attributes as antidotes to counteract their opposites, which are all pretty much distortions, right? Distorted cognitions. But simply understanding, realizing them, we are not going to be able to be free from samsara. As we said before, the selflessness is explained in terms of selflessness of a self-sufficient and substantially existent person. But that selflessness is a very gross level selflessness. But that is not really capturing the selflessness as it is at the subtle level, isn't it? So simply realizing that selflessness is not going to liberate us from samsara. So therefore, he needs to lead us slowly into understanding the subtle selflessness.
Tito tela toba tito timo toba suk de mazeba tesi du kansa denzi jola tiljuba tisi nyumo kanya doba mewe siva joa misiti jukbale se che nejo da me tonga che ge se nejo da me tonga ye suso ti doba menjirshi 소라빈 조조 비샤소 제주테 뭐 도미 셰다 다음에 도서 답에다 보신 예수 수비 셰로사 어디다 근데 메다 주라베 메다 주도 하대 근데 어머 집에 가지 그러 야 다음에 저도 레모도 지 근데 레베 메다 주도 하대 야 다음에도 장조 말이지 어디 송도 어디다 수소티도 문제시스 소다 주주 도자스 데도는 에 소글미 도자도 도도 마리스 어디다 라바스 도도 도자 참모도 저거 도도 말바티서다 어디 송야 고바 텐데스텔 송리마도 지 근데 가사라 라베 메사지로 소야들이야 탈롱고 시에 어디 송야 말이 탈롱을 떼야 더날 송리스 어디서
Acharya Chandrakirti, in his Madhyamik Avatar or supplement to the Middle Way, Umajukpa, states, as Geshe explained, that the 16 attributes or the Four Noble Truths, do not constitute the actual liberating paths from samsara, but they are more like a ripening paths to prepare our mind, for the subtle selflessness, because by realizing the 16 attributes, we are not able to uproot, subtle, attachment, toxic attachment, right? Some gross level attachments can be overcome by those, but we cannot uproot subtle attachment. And then why did Buddha talk about those things? Because that's like very skillful way of slowly guiding us into the actual path that liberates us.
What is the Karsa? Nipanes, the Colosson, the tea, Changi, Josu, Shows Jovala, Judama Hillis, that she don't disagree because don't you know what Changina Shin Sigura? Changina Yamayan, you don't do him, you don't do the dog, what is the number Joa Casa. Thomas, you don't know Joa lady says you're he with this word. Because you don't you double that and the Changdon daughter, you don't do what you did to Hero. This is the intelligent. Closely Changi Josie saw the Mervala. Judamo Hillis. She may look sugar behaving. Sugarlas, she may ale study. Sugar said, never hear the Shrama Lola. Sugar said, it is a long sugar killing Marisa. Double sugar mother, the heat was only called as me or the long sugar came in Lynch, Cola, double sugar Chabatan. They are Tono Conan de las, Sirama Lola, Tono de. So you sugar said the Tono Chagamadu. The heat was only here with Hidaka here what you do last year. That they will Lungo sugar Niga, Hedgings, long sugar killing or risk. Chungola digital doso do zigzam la zamli him mijogos ta do debe chungolia digital dosia imadu kola parvata hiji je do maseo do ta hiji do de ga keling ya marwa alla de se digital go keling ma long chungola ni kola parvata keling ma reso tisi chinda yi 또 피치 성지가 나 예동샤와 말라스 다 장애고 말아야 다 소리 바가가 예동 말라 장애니까 되와야 여봐 또그 뭐알 소바 해도 또그 뭐알 소바 해도 뜻 어디다 다 시라마비 장애 저것이 배다 너데발 No regret your tangy, no yours. Talk about some yas. What it is.
So, as Krishna read from the commentary, explained that one of the contentions is that in order to understand emptiness, we need to understand the distinction between that which is definitive and that which is interpretable. Chang'e in Tibetan, right? Chang'wa means interpretation, Nyaba means definitive. Okay? And so that's why the Buddha's discourses or sutras can be classified in terms of definitive sutras and interpretable sutras, right? Like that. So if you don't understand the distinction among these sutras and their subject matters, it will be difficult to understand emptiness. That's the contention there. Okay. So this is related to understanding the notion of what we call chokor, the will of Dharma, right? In English translating, what is a chokor? According to Vaibhashikas, Chedamawa, when they explain, I will use the Tibetan word because it's more definitive the English one, the will of Dharma, right? Chokor, so they only explain it in terms of what we call Tokbe Chokor, realization discourses, not in terms of scriptural discourse. They do not accept will of Dharma, right, as a scriptural discourse. Will of Dharma means, Chokor means it's a realization. And then if we ask them, give me an example, that's a path of seeing. Path of seeing is, will of Dharma, according to them. Yeah. So that is the Vaibhashikas. Now, according to Shantideva in Tibetan, right, but they accept that will of Dharma has two aspects, the scriptural discourse aspect and the realization aspect, isn't it? So they accept that. So if we ask them what is the scriptural discourse aspect of will of Dharma, the example they give is the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Four Noble Truths. Okay, they said that is scriptural discourse wheel of Dharma. Okay, they do not accept the second turning of the wheel of Dharma on Pranjana Paramita as a wheel of discourse. They do not accept the third turning of the wheel of Dharma as the scriptural discourse of the wheel of Dharma. Are you with me? They only accept the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, or the first sermon, as the example of the scriptural discourse of the wheel of Dharma. So I think Vaibhashikars even don't really make a distinction between a definitive and interpretable. It's as if whatever Buddha said, everything is accept as it is, you know. But as substantivers, there's one particular school following Rigbe Chendang, the followers of the logic, right? They do differentiate between definitive and interpretable a little bit here, you know. And so that is all talked about in the text called Toke Barwa, a blaze of reasoning, right? That's the name of text, right? Yeah.
What did that cause Chidani, the Queen, the daughter Changi, Geshe Phuntsok was the Changi GS and Kai, do Goma didn't Kai share my. Say that Dashi, you might take Geshe directly. That seems of a in the Changi the Jigo did it. That seems of a country, seems about Namji, dog Gundel, Colossum Changi, show at that, yes. Just done is Colossum Changi, Colo Tomoni Changdona, Tamon Yedo Shela, T. Uzeum, Colossum Ji, Keva, Jojagon in Georgian. 学校做倒霉东西就讲的写不对，可能通过告诉考察倒霉怎么对性，学习倒霉，对性，对性学弄了领着马高巴的，旁边告诉少嘛学啊，学他们些了，点不吃吧，讲呢，讲的学习倒霉点不着，他们告诉生意说的。 Simsaba Rang Devata, Dema Chomoto, Shepherd, Sa Shen, Shui, Dami Demate. Dame don't do God, Dame don't do Gorsum Sumba Le, Tambo Niji, Mudin, that Dasi, the Kelan, the Murumi, Changdon. Tame Mudin, that Dasi, the Kelan, you think? Yedung dor hedos. What does a similar with that Changi Dima? Do they with that Changdong is the killing of some of those, do Goma did Yomari. The similar Yeshe Changdong. Do it think it is yet, the Changi Yasti, no Shaka here. There's a similar color Tamaju, Gondes also Johnny, and the color Tomoni Changdong. So
as we said, Vaibhashikars, they really don't talk about definitive, interpretable, right? As if like everything Buddha said, accept it as it is. The substantivers, particularly those following the reasoning, that looks like some inkling. So they said, okay, looks like definite, but they never have any particular presentation about that which is definitive or interpretable. They just simply think there is some kind of distinction there. But now where we do see actual commentary and illustration, explanation of that which is definite, interpretable, kind of starts with the Chittamatrins or the Mind-only school of thought, Semsaba in Tibetan. And so Semsaba or the Chittamatrins, they accept all the three teachings of the wheel of Dharma. Okay? But according to them, in their explanation or commentary, illustration, the first turning of the wheel of Dharma on the Four Noble Truths, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma on the wisdom gone beyond, these are interpretable discourses, wheel of Dharma. Okay? Whereas the last teaching of the wheel of Dharma, according to them, is the definitive discourse or the definitive wheel of Dharma. Okay? Because they think that in the last turning of the wheel of Dharma, Buddha really differentiated the three, what you call the characteristics of phenomena, they talk about in their school of thought. Okay, so the first and the second wheel of Dharma are interpretable teachings according to the Martins, and the last turning wheel of Dharma is the definitive discourse. So we will stop there today, and we will welcome questions first. I'll go first to our Dharma friends on the Zoom, and give me a second also, if you will.
Yes.
Are there any questions here?
Yeah. Yes. It says here, why do the teachings always discuss the different views of various schools of thought?
Oh, hold for a second, please. Okay, I think I'm multitasking. That's not working. I'm trying to see if I can see the comment here or not. Well, I can't see the comments. Makes no sense. Okay, anyway, forget about.
Yeah.
Oh.
This one's a simple question, though. It seems.
Give me a second. Let me stop this one, because I'm talking to myself here.
Sure.
Okay, so can you say it slowly? What was the question?
Sure. It says, why do the teachings always discuss the different views of various schools of thought? Is it to help us exercise our own logic?
Okay. The Sungjo Nanglia Dubda Shi go Mango Shedi go Rawage. Manzo Dubda Shi Rawage. Chirama Dubda Mango Duju Shi go Rawage. This Shi go the Kumjen Karen by Nasa, the getting around so some tang go egg, shed Shigi or a carres at the Kuba Kumzer. Dubda Mandaba Tazu Dama Shedi.
This is so young shows on the Telia. Jinju to tell a Yama Jagalico, Jutama, Luxo, Kishado. What is she has in she was?
No, son. In a
So Bagdus in Jagati Kare, so Samzo, said killing us.
No.
But as a young Yaris, the teach Betonio to Shumaris. Purely in the Antonio, she was so well, some killing, but if Toyo she was, gets a Jagal, this was her sa. To them also, some years shows to Jibas Chibu, Damir, Jutta song your party, Goma did it shown it, do them a Hishara.
Already surely a DJ Campbell do them out, but Sanja Rangi do the Shishung Shab, then they came out again.
Sanja Rang, Suya, this some chicks so that Goma deal them. Sanja Sunda chick to song your marva.
No,
So you just have a Damir song, Chibaja song your marva.
I'll sugar.
The Mazon said, Goma did the Minda, Yungo, Chibaja song in the Coco Minda, Yungo.
Surely I care about the Deshe get that to the mother.
This year, Minda, some song, his own.
Lonson.
What is she said? The Ganga, yes, Tava Toji, Tava, Chitari, the last payment of the Chago.
In the Manzu did do the shitty share where the cartoons shall be.
La,
Manzu do the shitty quality share where Quabatum Zendi.
Gonzo,
Taco Chunda did that in there, Wage, Sanja Sung, let's say, the Deshe get to the mother she chung Wage. Then Manzu do the ship or the shady go Wage there.
I did that. Gonzo to that Shiva Carson. Sanja Suna Del Project Powers did that. Tiba Sticky Jasini. Tito Javas Rogos, the Dama Ganga Shigura.
I'll so
Shigmar.
and that's also some dialect to go.
Oh, this was
Just to make sure that we get as best answer as possible. The first case I said how the four schools of thought, Buddhist thought standards came from, right? Vibhashika to the Madhyamika. Of course, Buddha taught all kinds of teachings to suit the mental dispositions, the karmic dispositions, the abilities, as we said. Then at different times, the different masters, they looked at Buddha's teaching, and so then they started to give a commentary or illustrate it, right? This is how the four schools of thought came into being, As Geshe said to this some another day, that in India, the way it seems like the Buddhist masters did was, taking their own mental capacity, so they would follow, right, a particular school of thought. If they think that, okay, this is what makes sense to me, Vibhashika, then they said, this is where I am right now, right, until they change it, But in Tibet, we always claim to be the Prasangika topmost, regardless of where you are individually, right? You may not be there at all, but we are all Prasangikas. So that's Geshe want to repeat it again, the different approaches. But the reason why we, of course, this is in the text we discuss is because now all these different Buddhist schools of thought, they are interconnected, isn't it? They are like the steps in the ladder to be able to understand the higher levels. That's why we are discussing it. Of course, we have the right to critically assess this and see what makes sense to you, and then approach it accordingly. Okay, hopefully that answers. Yeah. And now you could open the glass door again if you have a question. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, so those 7 tachikas, so again, they really focus on the selflessness of persons. So it's not much on phenomena, right? And so is that why, because they don't focus so much on selflessness of phenomena, is that why they still see phenomena as still intrinsically existent or existing from its own side? Because it sounds like it's just not being explored, as opposed to the Prasangika who look at both person and phenomena, right?
Okay. So you're talking about the other school of the Middle Way, right? Savattantika Madhyamika school.
Yes.
So okay, let me check whether I understood right. So you said is that the reason why Savattantikas they still consider that phenomena are intrinsically existent is they don't seem to focus on the selflessness of phenomena, just on the selflessness of the person. Is that what you said? Right.
Right.
Okay. Is that the case? Right. Okay. So now I'll check with the case. Right. Korangi ta this working condition rowa di tanda Umar Rangju ba yo rowa ge parang di tende wa Umar Rangju ba di ji kangsa ge tangme liya kongpa shibu she de rowa ge chue ge tangme la kongpa she ge me za and chue de ge di rangwe de duba la rowa ge tanda thong de di chue ge tangme liya kongpa ma she ba di re sa da Umar tinju ba ge da kangsa ge tangme da chue tangme ni ga kongpa she rowa ge 지디 걸 랑을 좀 좀 시기 요마르와게 저 다디 코랑 코다데 딱다 대 요마르와게 어디 겐 센스와 제시
그래서
오마 랑규 바데스 코레 코다 쳬베이나 스와게 엔 강사게 다메리아 공부 시부지 셰르와게 쉐게 다메로 공부 마셰자 쉐 탐제데 랑어데 루발이야 난다 진제르와게 저 괜디 하르베사 쉐 탐제 랑어도 진데르와 오마 텐주베기 니가 공부 시기자
디데 가이세 말에 지다 그런 그래서 다다 투모 다음에 투모가 쓰고도 너 되면도야 어디 주자마 희게 캐는 거 다디
랑제
되게 캐는 거
랑제 되게 제유동
랑제 캐는 거 그 투모 가서 여기서 되게 차니 그 가서
랑제 강사 다음에 다가라 샤디 거래 랑제 되게 제유동 바데
다음에 투모가 돼 주자마 희가 캐는 거다
어디잖아 랑제 강사 다음에 단도 투모배 강사 다음에
랑제 면세 되게 다다 투모샤 강사 다음에 강사 다음에 참모 쳐고라 참모 다 태요 그 강사 다음에 라파마 다음에 참모들 쉬이 다음에 가 다음에 차라 치바요 뭐 치바셔 쉬쉬고 그러잖아
그래서 괜찮으라는 게 거의 메로바게 랑주베기 강사 당매 공부시에디 투모베기 강사 당매 랑제 투베 제지 동바 다가나셔고 그래
어디셔
디서와 다 추역 당매로 공부시게요 랑주바
추 다음에다 카가셔 강제 셔바 카가셔고 다 태요게 추 다음에 강사 다음에 강제 셔바셔고 말
어디 하고 있어
어다 랑주베제 되게 추 다음에 강제 다 셔바셔고 이도 되니까 추 다음에 캐링 거야 말아 다 심자마야 추 다음에 캐링 거도 추 다음에 다 가자 다음에 가자 카가셔 그러와 다 태요로 가자 지고 다 희쇼시고 가자 다음에 추 다음에 가자 지고 셔 그러와
랑주바기 강사 다음에 공부 마셔봐 내게 말어와게 이제 가자 최고 다음에 공부 마셔봐 내게 말어와게 최고 다음에 가르쳐고다 랑주바기잖아
그래서 다 또는 뭐 저기 뭐 둘 집에 동아지 저거다
어디 저거로 Okay, first, just to clarify that Savatandika Madhyamikans, do deal with both selflessness of a person and selflessness of phenomena. It's not like they did not pay attention to that. Their acceptance of intrinsic reality is not because they don't think about selflessness of phenomena. That's not the point. What Geshe wants to clarify is that there is a selflessness that is commonly accepted by all Buddhist schools of thought, right? And that is the selflessness of a self-sufficient and substantially existent self, right? And so that's accepted by the Vaibhashikas, that's accepted by the Sautrantikas, that's accepted by the Chidamatrins, that's accepted by the Madhyamikans, including, Prasangika Madhyamikan. With me? So for Savatandika Madhyamikans, selflessness of a person means just that, selflessness of a self-sufficient and substantially existent person, which from Prasangika Madhyamika's point of view is a very gross level selflessness. With me? But Savatandika Madhyamikas do think about the selflessness of phenomena, which is different than that selflessness. Okay, as we said, in terms of object negation, it's different. So for them, the selflessness of a phenomena is this, that there is not any phenomenon that exists like, I have to add the word 100% under its own unique modes of existence without being established by way of appearing to a correct perception. Okay? So that selflessness is the selflessness of phenomena, which is subtler than the other selflessness. With me? Of course, from Prasangika point of view, still there's an issue there, right? Is that clear? Right. So that's the complex matter there. Right. So the selflessness of phenomena, according to Savatandika Madhyamika, right, is the selflessness of a phenomenon, right, existing, right, by way of its own modes of existence, right, 100%, let's say. We don't use the 100%, right, without being established as being appearing to a correct perception. Right? Because they, remember, they always use the combination of subject and object. Remember that? Yeah. So in other words, there isn't something that 100% exists under its own right without depending on the imputing thought. Okay. That's my simplification in the footnote. Okay. Geshe didn't say that way. But that, so there isn't such a self, you mean? So that selflessness is the selflessness of phenomena according to Savatandika Madhyamika school. Yeah, that's a little subtle than the previous one. Okay.
Thank you. I have to think about it. But
yeah,
thank
yes,
you.
Definitely. Go ahead, yes, yeah.
Thank you, Geshe. I still have a hard time to understand from the Svantrantika point of view. I understand, that distinction between substantial existence and intrinsic existence.
Okay.
For me, substantial self-sufficient, the absence of self-sufficient, I get it.
Okay. Right.
You can still have intrinsic existence.
Right.
And understand the absence of being self-sufficient, But once you add substantial existence,
yes.
How is that? What is the distinction between the substantial existence and intrinsic existence from the Svantrantika point of view?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Question is very clear. Yeah. Quran tanda di karsawra koam hachabar de rawage Omar Rangju bagi rawage nidin di reshasa rawage Omar Rangju bagi ta 강사 랑자 투베 제여기 동바디 강사 담에 rawage 랑자 투바 세이데 다 동다 고고도사 데다 기녀로 게임도 rawage 제여기 rawage 동바 세이데 다 rawage 아니 디르와 karsawra 랑원의 두바스가 rawage 딘열의 개발 관계 책으로서 제여기 두바다 rawage 랑원의 두바니를 rawage 개발을 관계 책고 그래서 제이 두베 동바라로 제이 두바 요말라로게 랑의 두바 요라라로와 세다다디니 개발 관계 책으로서 오게
제요 세대 this 지상 데 롱지 메지 데 제다 개발 책으로 제요 세다 추억으로 그게 로 그게 당시에 차게 세는자 대면에 거라 정서적으로 있는데 가봉 강바 세도 차게 뒤에 파세는 그 뒤에 제가 그 뭐에 배우지 파세도 저 매우려고 될 거래 딱 요소다
알로
정서적으로 딱 요소다
라레
다 제여서는 그래서 뭐뭐도 뭐 말고서를 쓰고다
노
그 뭐뭐 말고 당시에 뭐뭐 도도를 지어다 그 가서 시는 충분 가서 그 뭐뭐랑 이 내가
알 란지글로 도고 요말 사이더보다
라
좀바 함을 좀바 함데 젠 란지글로 만도 바데 제일
라로저 수시에서 나 라로저 도와서 다 니들도 해야 되잖니
라 니데 샤데 란지글로
좀 봐로 시에서 나 라로저 도와도 면도와서
도고 바데 다요셰
도와다 다 면도와도 제요 뉴샤미
알 미도바데 제일
제요
알 랑게베게 다가라 셰시고 제이디
런지버스나 따요 되어야 돼. 다 찍바저리 가져대. 그 찍바리 다 당초 그 차기스도 그 런사 되거든 다 지어셔다.
노사
다그 쪽도 소리도 그 따요 자라고.
노사
강바 통화 디게 레스도 그 쪽성을 저거.
라루와 라루와
디레저 따요 소. 다 힘에 소리. 이니 속 소리. 뭐뭐 소리 지어서.
노사
뭐뭐 도도지다. 뭐뭐도 가서 쓰나 그런 뭐뭐랑 되거든 뭐뭐 많이 제서 말봐.
라오
그 디레저 지어서.
노사 다 랑웨네 두바세디
랑원 저서 다 돼서 그 당동세 니지여만 저서다. 그래 전다데 가르에서 봐. 쟤는 니지여만 당동세 랑원 저서.
Loss. Okay, so let me try this as I said, right? The Zeyu Tibetan term, which we translate as substantially existent, right? There is not something, right? The difference between imputed phenomenon, Tarye, or imputed existence, and Zeyu, substantial existence, is this, right? This explained more in the Vaibhasika schools. I think that seems to be acceptable to the Savathantika truth. Yeah. For example, a table is an imputed existence. What it means is, as Geshe said, the Tarye is like if you destroy this table, right, then the perception of the table is no more feasible, right? Either you can destroy it literally or you can mentally dismantle the table, right? And then there is no perception of the table. So that's called imputed existence. Whereas the example Geshe give of colors like blue or red or yellow, right? You cannot make the blue not blue, right? In whatever way, you're not going to destroy or dismantle it. The blue will remain as blue, right? The perception remains. So that kind of existence called substantially existent, blue or yellow, anything like that. Are you clear between these two distinctions, the substantial existence imputed, before I go to the next part, right? Right, okay. Now, the intrinsic existence, according to Savatthana Mantra, is, things should be findable, right, under analysis. If you say, right, whatever that is, right, they say it should be findable. That's what we call intrinsic existence. Yeah, is that? Yeah. So findability under ultimate analysis is what they call intrinsic existence. Yeah. Yeah.
So Geshe gave the explanation of imputed versus substantial, but this sounds like the distinction, according to the higher schools, of what Vaibhashika think is conventional and ultimate truth, right? Conventional truth is a phenomena that when it's destroyed or mentally separated, the appearance of it will cease to exist to
That's
consciousness.
use of conventional truth.
That's a conventional truth according to Vaibhashika. This is exactly what he said for substantial existence.
Okay.
So according to them, though, the table is substantially existent. So there is a different. I'm confused here because this is the traditional explanation of substantial versus imputed.
Okay.
Substantial is something that you can perceive without something else appearing to the consciousness for it to be perceived by the consciousness. For example, the person is an imputed existence because what you see is the body and the mind and all the behavior, and on the basis of that you impute person.
So that's
But the table is substantially existent because it appears to you directly. So it's kind of the opposite of that.
Because the table is what you said?
It's a substantially, it's not an imputed existence because you don't, in order to perceive the table, you don't need to perceive something else which is not the table. Unlike the person, in order to perceive a person, you have to perceive something else which is not the person. That is the body and the mind and all that thing. So it's kind of almost the exact opposite of what Geshe said.
Thank you.
So it's confusing.
Thank you. I understood. Yeah. Korangi di kangen di shiorgen. Korangi kasore tuda ome lula roage. Ane kunzo temba da tendam de basha roage. Kunzo temba se di ane lo chomba ham roage. Se sana marip se ku kunzo de chini lo ko de do koran kawar lo in roage. Di chabe na tanda jeyo dang roage. Ta kunzo de chikba sa roage. Ke senso ge. Ta di chikba yin mena ge di se se kyong roage. Kunza tempa la du kan la ke le ka chomba ham le sa wa na rangjing lo ka sa da do ra se jo wa ge je da ane kunza tempa de sha ge yeba yin na wa ge je de kan da chong se de kunza tempa yin gu du sa ka sa kunza tempa wa ge ko kunza do yo wa ge koran gi de ka je da ta ge khodan chi la shamba chen de la gu du ke pe na kangsa ra wa chen ta ge re la wa ge kangsa ta ge de ka sa de kangsa di ha go wa la ya 강사 많이 받지 그 풍부라 그러게 때네 강사 지금 다 잡으러 마도 풍부대 강사 말에 강사 많이 지금 시시하네 강사 따게 요 와서 그러게 쪽세 많이 받지야 쪽세게 따게 요 말와서 그러게 긴 생각도 하게 제가 디시데 갈아 제가 강사라부터 따게 그래서 강사 많이 받지라 강사 따셔 그러게 쪽세디 하고 bar 꼭 무슨 그 통되어 쪽세 많이 받지 plus turn 쪽서 임에 하고 보면 되서 봐게. This that the gang saying and again this session I said if you understood what I said clearly explain it.
군소 대마다 동도 대마서
말 군소 고랑이게 군소 대마다 두다 오마게 군소 샤다다 치라마베 군소 대마 샤다다 제예 샤다니데 그 친이 찍바 거드도 어디 딱다 레디요 말게.
다 치라마 그저 엄마 찍고 치라마 가가 도 내가 가가
어디 치라마 좀 선나게.
치라마 저기
군소 대마
로学习啥的 저서 도와들 군소 대마시
라
좀쓰나
제가 그 어디 나다 제여기 캔디 계자들에도 왔어도 그래.
좀学习是로 도와들 군소 가서 네
돈담 대마.
군소
로 도와버
로 문도한테 가래 돈도 대마
라 알로 로 마도버 데 돈담 대마 제 제도 저거데 돈담 대마 차도 로가게
저저기 군소 대마리
말로 건다 알로 로 마도버 데 선사 군소 대마 차도 로와 but
뭐 서로서 가래 로 문도
라라라라 제가 그래라고 제가 단데 디 군소 대마 친이 샤이다 제여 그 친이 샤번데 찍바 찍자래도 와서 그렇게 디
그 제요세나 되게 단단히 치라마도 하면 너대와 있는 양대 카레 돈도 대봐서 뭐가 간가 돈도 대봐 뭐가 이메일 돈도 대봐 지금 뭐지 양 현대 계획
okay, let me confine to one school because Geshe sir got so many other schools, so I don't want to confuse. So when you said that definition, you are only confined to Vipassana school of thought, right? Or are you talking about
No, Vipashka. I would say every school, everybody,
Oh,
would,
is that the
especially
school
for
that
tantrikas,
different?
will accept that.
See,
See, this is not about the two truths. What Geshe gave explanation was the two truths according to the Vaibhashika school.
Yes.
So according to them, the table is not is a conventional existence because if you break the table,
yes, the table's convention.
okay.
That's right.
All right,
that's right.
but this is the meaning of imputed versus substantial that it's unrelated to these two. So unrelated, it has nothing to do with that.
Sure,
So
yes.
imputed is something
Okay.
that imputed phenomena, and all the schools will accept that.
Yeah.
Something that you can perceive without, you cannot perceive. Awareness will not arise without perceiving something else which it is not.
Sure.
An example is the person.
Yeah. right.
The body is
Right.
not the person, but you have to perceive the
Right.
body in order to think
Right.
person.
Right.
A table, you don't need to think
Sure.
perceive anything in order to
Right.
perceive the
Okay.
table.
I think Geshe need to explain that clarification about
It has
right.
nothing
Not
to
what
do with the
right.
two truths.
Right,
It was just that the way he explained it was the verse, the imputed
imputed
versus
part is
substantial,
different,
as
right?
though it's in the same way as the two truths, but there's a way of not explaining it acceptable to all the schools, which has nothing to do with these two truths according to the Vaibhashikas.
Oh, okay, right. ala kurang disi ko da gen tagi gen gi zeyu da tayo gi sung de de da ro wa ge tanda mi ge karsa or koyo tanda pe sha zo wa ge koyo tayo ge pe de kan sana kangsa da wa je na kangsa mayin bi jol te ne kangsa ta ro ko tayo yin ba ko do ro wa ge tagi ngan je tayo se de ge 좀 봐, 뢰 세번나 랑집에 로 도서나 다이레스 레벨 와게. 제가 디니 그 결다를 통계에 맞아 와게. 그 돈다디 찍고 누구 매버 통계를 좀 봐. 게 거서. 게.
거기 단다 줄여야지 도하게.
어.
저 란주빌로다 나나 도하는 시에 안에 라닝 외송하다 주제 외송하다 또 그뭐 그 지다시야지 와게.
아.
거기.
응.
나도 거기 좋아다지 와게.
응.
먼저 도하는 시에 안에 란주빌로다 도하는 시에 지다기 제거지 와게.
응.
라닝 외송하다 주제 외송하다 또 그뭐 그 지다기
다등에도 시작만 놓자. 너무 자 말마.
거기 딱이 응어갱 단다 지다기 제거다기 지라마 송조지 송도와.
어.
티톤 단다디니 제바 가려요. 그래서 거 뭐야 단다디레 라주빌로기 지다기 제바 줘로 하게. 티고고
런절로 자
맞아.
내라데. 가르사 데라. 런이 거서 세계에서 또 그거한테 딱요 대목과 제에서 자 다다 찍어서 같이 공부도 돼. 제에 있어서
라우.
쪽대가 딱요 시발.
랑주 비 다요 라 그러 게.
저도 빠빠도 까마 가가시나.
뭐 양게 추추나스게. 맞아 랑주 비 단다 라면 로 게. 이게 쪽세도 더블로 와 캔다 계속 게 친이디. 쪽세 마임 비질라 때네 쪽세 다 고기 요 말로 게.
그래서 말해. 다다서 그 많이 벌어 저리 뭐 다스 니께서 말해.
맞아 괜다 가서 랑주 비 수거로 게.
쇼유고서 또 고무고대 셔버와.
어레 저래 최정에서도 다 쪽세 라고 되라. 쪽세 최정에서 몰라.
저서 고서 알고 깡바다 토고데 드레지 수자 쪽세 시거와.
네 쪽세 많이 받디 깡바 되게 사고.
깡바 받고 카바 받고 그러면 이거 쪽세 로 도그러.
알레.
직발사 관시.
알레디 강사기 풍보디 강사 많이 벌라 강사 따원 나시 쪽세 되게 깡라 되게 강가로 쪽세 말아봐 될 쪽세 따서 따여레서 디스 거게.
다 진짜 코아 진짜 말다 다요스도 다 메시지 그 런이 고서 희소 고서 저 거봐 딱요 저 먹어봐 저다 공부다고 제요세
라고.
쪽세도 딱요 저거다
어디 게 대세도 가르쳤는데 게 코디 따다 치고다 랑이 왜서 말라
쇼여스 고서 저 거봐
디트 그거 사이로 봐.
저 그거 딱요
알레 최정 왜서 벌써 깡라 되게 왜서
어
따고.
저거 쪽세스 강바다 토고다 강가 용게지 그거로
알레 그러서.
요
그러서.
다 공부서 이나
어.
그 진짜 가도 뭐 코라 공부도 지금 그 차이를 가르쳐야 돼. 공부를 하자 되면서 콜레 공부를 그냥 차이 먹어서 공부를 계속 하고 말아.
알레 그러서. 알레 제대로 간디 단다 게 송대야 되다 강사 따고 이말하고 니디 그
강사 당연히 지금 저 강사
게다게 요 말아.
지금 다 적다 지금 샤워 강사.
게다 요 말아.
차이를 때 다시 저러 와.
Okay. I think it comes to that, right? This up top. Yeah, can you repeat the original question? Your question, then I will translate.
Yeah, my question was the way Geshe explained the difference between imputed and substantial
Right.
existence is very different
How
from
we
the
did
way.
in the Vaibhashikas two truth, right? That's what I'm
Yes,
saying.
yeah, but it's different from the way all the schools would accept the difference between imputed and substantial existence.
Right. Then the Quran said that Gengi Zedani. First, let me translate this. Then I might forget this, right? And then come back and share. What you said, right? Geshe said the example you gave, like I think in the seventh and the Madhyamika school of thought. That's what Geshe was helping, right? What's the difference between substantial existence and imputed existence, right? That's what Geshe differentiate. So the substantial existence refers to a phenomenon. For it to be able to exist, it's not dependent upon, right? Parts or like basis or something that's not itself, right? So it gets as a color, all those things work. The imputed existence is like that something that's dependent on the part. So in that sense, the table is just like a person. It is dependent on its parts, imputed, right? That's what Geshe is saying, right? So that clears up that part, right? So now but I understand where still the issue is. So Geshe that can be that did the dix again. Dagi Korangi Jayu da Rangwen Rube Kabashaduka Jayu de Lage Jomba Ham, Louis Savana, Ranzim Lord again, and then cause Torba de Tayo again. Mother was the Jayu again. Did me get under Chedamabegi, the Tondan, the Kunza de Megi, called Cheney the Chipachado, right?
당행에 해야 시라마 루시라. 저거 루시에서 런도 도세 시라마 겹도.
라오디 카르사고레 Chedamabegi, Tambani, Cheney Shabba, the Chipachado, right?
다 잡어 이게. 저거 루시에서 런도 도와시오라. 다 초지 마셔고다.
자자오디 차고로 again. In a deed and the Jeda, Kevasha, the Duta Pomagi, Takaran Kellinger, but Jeramabi, Jewisha.
This is my Jurama that the Ranju Kela takes young.
Alone,
so to go this in Prayu. Do Mugo, the Zio. Joseph, the Tahu, almost service as the
That's right. So earlier, what Geshe responded that is pertains to the Bible school of thought only, right? It's not be acceptable. Other schools, we already talked about seventh Tendika school, which is very different, right? So the substantial existence, according to Bible school of thought, right? I'll repeat it so that we don't get lost. A phenomenon, if it is destroyed literally or mentally dissected, right? If the perception of that phenomena retains, right? So then that's called a substantial existence. If the perception is no more feasible, then it's called imputed phenomenon, according to the Bible school. And that's similar to the definition of the true truth in that school, right? Okay. So that clears up now all that. Yeah.
So if I could summarize, so Geshe was responding to Alain's question about the self-sufficient, substantially existent.
Yeah.
So the self-sufficient,
Yes,
he understood,
Right.
and I,
Right.
Geshe seems to say that
Right.
it's
Substantially.
self-sufficient means not depending on causes and conditions, whereas substantially existent in that
Right, that
definition
particular-
refers to not depending on parts.
Right. Yes.
These two, so it can,
Right.
this expression, self-sufficient,
Right.
substantially existent,
Right.
means not depending on causes and conditions
Yes.
and not depend on parts.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll stop there today. I think time is up because Geshe has to eat on time because of his health condition. But we will continue. Please keep that. Okay. Yeah.
There's no partless part. It's all long stopping. You can think about that next week.
So I'm sorry to interrupt there, right? Because I have prayer requests too, so I can, right? If you do, then I have to give to others too, right? So please hold on because you know your question with all the due respect, right? Because I have to think about Geshe's health too. He need to eat on time. He has health condition. So I have a prayer request. Again, 2 minutes I'm just stretching you again. The tantanganza de labra chimbo jiwa again long base ki. The gingema kurang chokso chene that chichi chimbo chishar kollo 중리 시험으로 로버트 맥슨사 코랑 로 중리 시험이 쉬는 다베 랍데기 딘데 체제 첨부 시작이 좀 코랑 공부서도 와 공로 제시하고 디 투메 점주스나로나스 I have received a prayer request that former president of the Cal State Long Beach, Robert Maxson, I remember him when I was there at school, right? He served the university for 12 years. I think he is regarded as the best ever president of that university, and probably across our board. He passed away 89, and so we will do a prayer for him and others, think of. Yeah. We will do Avalokiteshvara prayer. Sorry. We have more prayer requests? Yeah.
Tsedan Demba, when that answer again, cancer never sha. Menju, the Mangan or the Menju Chena Chishimber. Only Nishi Sinda Yon actually. Tumenaranas. A prayer request for when Dak An, who is experiencing cancer and is undergoing or is trialing a new medication through chemotherapy. So prayers for Nguyen Dak An's quick and full recovery. And for those who have requested prayers today, along with all sentient beings, may they be free from all obstacles, hardship, and negative karma. May their wishes and prayers be fulfilled. May they be guided by the blessings of the three jewels, and may they experience everlasting peace and happiness. And then we have one announcement as well, just for you to remember and keep on your calendars. This upcoming Tuesday, day after tomorrow, we'll be observing the holy day of the Buddha's descent from Tushita. And we'll be commemorating that holy day in the form of offering tsok in the evening at 7:30. So everyone's welcome to join.
That day is also the former Dzong Rinpoche's anniversary of his passing.
Oh, wonderful.
I see.
Thank
I
you.
see. So Tuesday also is the day of the former Buddhist owner, which is passing as well. So we'll be offering talk
Thank
on
you.
that day.
Okay, so we will do the Medicine Buddha prayer first, and then Avalokitesh for a second. Tuje Gunla, Yombe, Jomden, Tenzan Tube, Yendu Dung, Dozo Neze, Sanje, Menye La, Bindu Yaye, Chaze Lo, Om Namo Bhagavate, Beganze, Guru Benduya, Tabaranzaya, Tadangadaya, Arahade, Samya Sambudaya, Teata, Om Bekaze, Begaze, Mam, Begaze, Begaze, Ranza Samugade, Soha, Teata, Om Bekaze, Begaze, Mam, Begaze. Teada Om Begaze, Begaze, Mam, Begaze, Begaze, Ranza Samugad, So Gawa De Nyoda Da Membe Yabon, Dobjonen, Dowa Chija, Te Salam, Gubara Sho, Don Kolun, Juve, Jebodo, Jendon, Gawa Sangbe, Sangye Don, Kala Kandu, Dela, Ted, Jamba Generes, Tanze, and Omani Peme, Hum, Omani. Omani Beme Huri, Gawa Di, Nyodo da Jere Sewan, Dowa Jija Maleba, De Sala Gubar Sho. So we will do the prayers of long life. Lord Yazu, Yundon, Bega De, Yazan Pumbe, Judo, Mimba Jin, Demba Jin La, Wando Yiju. 当年出关就老所望的马王的门关键东岸的高丽中所念到设置让关要我念把要设计张所定制马尾西巴定制这边英国这边这世界念关长久定的龙道当这边北远这对着家族关岛下的 태상 공다 제주 좀베제 용조 요래 도베 냐게 롱레 대전 네베 베덴바 도덴 칸레 다보 샵데 도나 공멘 자바 남다고 된단 로베 펜데 조베 런도 주민 제베 텐레제 계산 되제 된도 샵데 解决拉面突解没有浪的改善对接电当上面少中多多解冻其他面边等轮着说让家先给公布财报面做到南街也用这么少做这些老做他们这些到底没些超给我做对不对？这当路上叫我也协助电帮人别他的对这用过些年就养着年纪公布晓得一旦送过强大边面的代表找我说说他我那么到最近养到浪巴也路上年点别多晓得推着家人农村养百姓上着南这长征准备广州写了送着这边的代表我的全部这边东岸国王保障的这边日朗水域帮着的准备等等那些比如20年全部晓得说开边朗多国际再大的准备查查年做让上边理解人quyền一些农顺便新年全部晓得台上多了准备等这些民主大学上面世界老人这点等的别说我真的新年全部说说叫我世界见了等昨天当天送面操呢打造老上特别两个人都说常住心着人不知马街不能解决这也我娘吧国内广东陪我说东尼到我人不知马街不能解决这也我娘吧国内广东陪我说啥些别些如今没多长热到20年的烟吧上街行动没得为我如果拿到行了就把说高的这边我为新港所变当在我马路中为现在是我下边谁的把多研究这一当古着让那满的你养到要面叫我滚到养到浪漫当这面去接不了龙这些啥到南街远点拉住多些强烈过把牛多说